Hello? Is this thing on?
Oh, right, sorry about that. Let me just fix it, and you're good to go.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Hi. Today I'm here to tell you that you're writing poetry wrong. Yes, that's right, this is a niche topic and you probably don't care about it, but wait! Listen, even if you're not a poet, this video might be the one for you. Why, you might ask? Well, because poetry is the art of human expression, which means if you are partaking in any kind of art, this might be useful for you, just because of the fact that I'm critiquing a form of human expression, which might even help you improve your own art. Did that make sense? I hope it made sense. It made sense in my mind. But yes, welcome to Why Mainstream Poetry Kinda Sucks. Now you might be thinking, oh, I should listen to your advice. Who are you to tell me what's right or wrong? Good question. Maybe I'm not at all qualified, and that makes sense. Poetry is incredibly subjective, just as art is. And for all I know, you could think that my opinion in this is incredibly incorrect, and that's okay. But I'm mostly trying to do this in an effort to provide constructive criticism. So why is my opinion important? So a few years ago, I was a slam poet. I got invited to perform and was featured on a few articles. So I feel like while I might not be the best, I am all right. And I feel like if you're all right, you're allowed to kind of speak about things. It's just me trying to justify why I should be able to make this video. And during my time as a slam poet, I noticed something. Anything is poetry as long as you use that poetic voice. You know which voice I'm talking about. You know, the one where the person's content literally isn't poetic at all, or is just like a sentence, but the way they're saying it just makes it sound like poetry while you're just sitting there like, that wasn't a poem. I'm pretty sure he just said a sentence. And again, all poetry is technically just a sentence. But mostly when you talk in that voice, you're doing it to emphasize a particular thing or to bring out the emotions in a particular passage. And I feel like some people aren't using that voice for that. Like they're just using it to claim it's poetry when it's really not. Is this me gatekeeping? I don't know. But here's a dramatic reenactment of what I mean by that poetry voice. Oh, well, imagine as I'm pacing the pews of a church corridor and I can't help but to hear an exchanging of words. What a beautiful wedding. What a beautiful wedding, says a bridesmaid to a waiter. Ah, yes, but what a shame. What a shame that the poor groom's bride is a whore. It's upsetting me and my homegirl, because we feel like, damn, well, if you can't go to Bella Noche, then where the hell can you go? According to all known laws of aviation, there's no way a bee should be able to fly. Its wings are too small to get its fat little body off the ground. The bee, of course, flies anyway, because bees don't care what humans think is impossible. You see what I mean? You see how that can make anything sound like poetry? Now, I don't know if this is like discrediting slam poetry, because I think most people who use this voice to talk in poetry are genuinely talented people. I just think sometimes some people use it and they don't use it correctly. Is this me gatekeeping? Possibly. You know, this made sense as a script and now I'm like, oh, why am I making this? This is an incredibly niche topic. Will anyone care? Probably not. But should I be making YouTube videos just because people care? Probably not. So we're gonna move on. On that vein, I noticed that poetry on Instagram follows a very specific structure. Now, I don't know if this structure is right or wrong, but some of it is genuinely crappy. Like, just because you write something in the following structure, that doesn't make it poetry. Do you see how just because they seem to write it in this structure, they thought, oh, it's a poem. Like, no, it's not a poem. You just wrote a sentence and structured it like that and wrote it all lowercase. You did this for what? If writing in a lowercase is providing you with an identity marker in your work, go for it. If it's adding some sort of value to your work, then go for it. I'm not going to stop you from doing that because it makes sense and it adds personality and characteristics to your poem. But if it doesn't and it has no function, then why are you doing that? Is it just because you want to make it look artsy? That doesn't make sense to me. Speaking of Instagram poetry, everyone knows that for your poem to be considered as a good piece of Instagram poetry, it must be about love, sex, or comparing women to some sort of a weather phenomenon, whether that's storms, hurricanes, or rain clouds. These are the only states of a woman. Because everyone knows, oh, what's a woman if she's not a metaphor? What am I talking about? Well, here are some examples. Also, here's some examples of just some genuinely bad Instagram poetry. Silly girl, you're different was you're beautiful all along. This is poetry version of You're Not Like Other Girls. She was music, but he had his ears cut off. This just reads like a Twitter shitpost. Sometimes, when life starts to feel as quiet as a steady ocean, I can't help but wonder whether this is just a calm before the storm. This is not even the poet's own metaphor. This is literally just a sentence with a metaphor that the poet hasn't even made up. I'm afraid to be free, my brain gets too busy. Yet another Twitter shitpost. You see what I mean? Now, I know that this video sounds very, very gatekeeping-esque. I sound like I'm trying to set a standard and being like, oh, did you write like this? Well, then your work is not poetry, which honestly, I have no right to say. And if the work of people who write like this provides you with enjoyment and makes you feel good and you genuinely just like it, then go ahead. Don't listen to me. I have no power in telling you what's the right kind of poetry and what's not the right kind of poetry. This is mostly just my opinion and things that I've noticed online, which I think are slightly weird. But my question for this video is, what happened to poetry of people? You know, the kind that doesn't depend on a particular tone of voice or cliches to exist, but one that just exists to explain the beauty of being a human being. I want poetry that reads about the feeling that you get when you taste an emotion you haven't felt before, or those that you know so well. Like poetry of how the rain feels like your sorrow when it's overwhelming, weighing you down with its drench. Or the way laughter makes you feel like the faintest flame warms you from within. Or how the burst of flavored feelings stain your tongue when you experience something you just know would make a lovely memory. Tell me about the way your shadow scares you sometimes, because it's the only proof you have of your physical being, but also so incredibly impermanent. Tell me about how the world in the morning reminds you of healing, and how there's always a chance that you can be reborn even after the night in your lifetime. Tell me about how you're beginning to see poetry in all the ordinary things that you do, from the way the world draws art on your skin to the way your brain condenses the intensity of your lifetime into electrical signals, or the manner in which you, a human of the ordinary, are capable of comprehending the greatness of the world, bursting to be alive around you. Tell me about how you are poetry, about how everyone is a poem that deserves to be heard. And if you don't want to talk about the poetry that you exist as, and you just want to write about love, do that. But don't compare your lover to the weather. Women are made of more than just elements of the sky. Write poetry about how the seeds of emotion your lover writes into you make you understand about why every single poet in every single civilization who was celebrated was always a romantic poet. Tell me about why love is the most celebrated feeling in the world. Tell me about why love is the most beloved human experience. Tell me about how your skin was fashioned only to feel the touch of your lover. Make your poetry teach me, the unloving, about why love is worth it. I'm not asking you to write poetry that the world will never forget. That's difficult, and that's incredibly hard. The greatest poets are not chosen during the time that they're alive. They're chosen by the way people remember them. So I'm not asking you to take the burden of trying to be remembered, nor am I trying to gatekeep poetry as much as it sounds like I am. All I'm trying to say is that we need to start writing poetry for the reason why it was created, to express the beauty of humanness. If you think an Instagram poet or someone who just talks in that poetry voice is good and really, really makes you feel moved, then go ahead. Perhaps they're right, perhaps I'm wrong and I'm doing it incorrectly. Go ahead, keep consuming their work. I guess all I'm looking for is better mainstream poetry. Also to add, not all Instagram poets are bad. I found some really, really great Instagram poetry. Actually, while I was reading up about bad poetry, I came across this article by Vice that I'll be putting down in the bio, where one of their journalists basically talked about how bad poetry is abundant on Instagram, and they basically made a fake poetry Instagram account and ended up gaining a ton of followers by the end of a month. I think they almost gained up to 600 followers, and they said that they were on track to gain 8,000 by the end of the year, which is insane. And they were writing bad poetry on purpose, and they were like, people were commenting about how much this poetry meant to them, and were sharing them and saying how incredibly touched they were by these poems, even though the author of the poems was trying to write bad poetry on purpose. And so the journalist of the article theorized that maybe the reason why Instagram poetry is so popular is because maybe people aren't looking for poetry that is deep or multi-layered, that is full of symbolism and metaphors, and it takes time to dissect, but instead they're looking for shorter, quicker to consume poetry. And I personally understand that. I also think maybe it has a lot to do with our attention spans. I feel like when we're on social media, we have a very short attention span unless we have some sort of investment in what we're watching, and therefore I understand why someone would probably just want a quick hit of relatability to their emotions rather than a long, winded, layered poetry. That's my answer for why bad poetry might be more prevalent on Instagram. And technically, I don't know if that means that this poetry is bad, because if it is helping someone and enriching their experience of the language and of their emotion, then I guess it's not bad at all. Okay, cool. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Hello, welcome to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I don't expect this video to get likes or views just because it is a very, very niche topic. So I get it, I understand. Made this mostly for myself and for anyone who has noticed the same thing I have. Also, if you have an opinion that differs from mine or think I am wrong, feel free to tell me in the comments. I love to hear constructive criticism and learn more about the things I enjoy. If you enjoyed this video and want to encourage me to make things more like this, or just encourage me in general, hit like, press subscribe, leave a comment. I will see you next Sunday. Bye! Wow, Hannah, what a cool mic you have. Do you spend real money to get it? Great question. It's actually just my phone covered with a sock, and this is not a real mic, which is why you could tell that I'm holding it kind of weird. I tried to make an artsy video and I think I failed.